And that should alarm you to the point, you know what, folks? It's time to get a rope. It's time to get a rope. Y'all remember the French Revolution, right? Yeah, when these elitists tried these elitist scams, what'd they do to them? They try and cross the line with this, right, now that we know that it's fake. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, right, some hackers, of course, I mentioned in my last video, hackers hacked into the CRU, which is the main quoted, cited institute for global warming, and hence cap and trade, the Copenhagen Treaty, and Agenda 21 all came from the brainstorming of these people. Now, if you don't know what Agenda 21 is, it's a document that was written up under the guise of stopping the people from burning down the rainforest / burn farming. Now, I'm not here to say that's a bad thing. / burn farming is a bad thing, okay? But what the framework that they came up with had nothing to do with stopping that. So again, under the auspices of a lofty goal, they have put their sinister plan in motion. And I included some pictures of some articles from the Telegraph.uk and Mail Online UK, and that really outline this real well, and I've been inserting those along here so that you can see them. But here's the thing you have to remember, people. This is about socialist, Marxist takeover of the entire world. This is about taking your freedoms from you. This is about outlawing your air conditioner. This is the excuse that they have to move you and confiscate your private property, to take from you your well rights, to disallow you from transferring your property to your children when you die, in the name of saving the earth, because the earth was getting too hot. And folks, there was a guy, Yuri Bezimov, right, worked for the KGB, defected to America, that explained this process perfectly.
Which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years.
Perfectly talked about the demoralization of America. Talked about the tearing down of our institutions. But most importantly, it talked of stealing a generation of children to indoctrinate them. And Daddy Bush signed on to Agenda 21, and his statement was, "We will henceforth pledge our allegiance to the United Nations and Agenda 21, not the Constitution." We should have entered a shooting war the day he declared that, people. The day he declared that. I'm telling you, we need to get some rope.
Success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast.
Destabilization of the economy. The information I have says that this will be the last Christmas without martial law. The information I have that says the numbers from this Christmas are so bad that they had an advance meeting ahead of time to tell the owners of corporations that they get to live it up this Christmas, because afterwards the dollar is going to fall to about 6 cents of what it's worth right now. That's the information that I'm getting. And let me tell you something, right? That's the financial crisis. Then they have global warming, and this world government is their great solution. This global warming and everyone coming together. The excuse for moving all our industries to China and Mexico and other third world nations, or developing nations as they like to call them, and taking away your jobs to send our money and our jobs somewhere else. What is that? That is Marxist wealth redistribution. To take what you earn, to take what you built. Your ancestors built this land. Your ancestors made this the greatest nation on earth. And because other nations were so corrupt and could not lead themselves, they, from across the pond, and other socialist-leaning countries have decided that America has to be dismantled.
The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis.
And yet here they are bringing you their crisis, and he told you, once the crisis happens, and there are so many, the banking crisis, it's over. It is over after this Christmas, people. Everyone's broke. Unemployment's over 20%. This is going to be the worst Christmas since the Great Depression. And when those numbers hit, it is over. And the solution is a new monetary system. And it's my understanding that it's going to be a minimum of $6 to buy one of the new ones, or even 10. People. And not only that, but they're pushing the cashless money system. Verichip, who I showed you, already bought Receptor Cell Limited and came out with the flu-sensing RFID. Well, they also bought Steel Vault. You know what Steel Vault is? Now, I showed you the NASDAQ papers. It was all in there, and now it's mainstream news. This is from BNet. They bought Steel Vault. Why? Because they're the largest company that handles personal identification security and finance security. So now you have flu sensing RFID, you have it hooked to everything to do with your medical records and everything else, hooked through Social Security and hooked through this money firm, all on one chip. Why? Because that's their grand socialist solution. And we know what that is. People. People. You need to get ammunition. There's not going to be a resupply. You are the resistance. And if they push cap and trade, if they push this treaty, folks, it's time. It's time. We need to get some rope. And it's time. It's time to stand to. Clickety-clack. Rack the slide back. And get ready for war, folks. Because that's what it's going to be. And you got to tell them that's what's going to be.